What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Bleep Bloop podcast. I am your host, Retro Lag himself, and this is the first episode where we actually got video to accompany the audio. So if you are used to listening to this on Spotify, then you need to go to YouTube to Retro Podcasts, RETR0 PODCASTS, and check out the Bleep Bloop podcast. This is actually episode 12, but this is the first episode with video. I figured what better way to push them out than with an episode covering the latest issue of Game Informer. Now, for this cover this month, or it was actually for November, it has Halo Infinite on the cover. Really dope art. I mean, I've been a subscriber to Game Informer for years, and this is issue number 341. Now, what I like to do on the Informer is I don't specifically cover the main stories. Rather, I find the things that interested me in the issue. So for this one, this week, for this issue, some of the highlights that y'all should check out if you don't really check out Informer, or maybe you did get it, you didn't really look at it. They covered, obviously, Halo Infinite. Big spread on that game. I'm hearing nothing but good things in terms of the multiplayer. Not too sure about the campaign itself, but a lot of people that have played the multiplayer say it's a really, really good game. The other thing they cover is the Game Awards. Game Awards look really... I'm going to say it like this. I watched the Game Awards, and I'm going to do an episode covering them, the recap, but I really just watched for the trailers. I mean, I kind of had an idea who I thought might win. And I'm going to tell you like this, I was hands down pretty sure It Takes Two was going to win. The other games, they had their reasons or their chances, and I'll go into that into the episode when I record it, so stay on the lookout for that one. They also covered 20 years of Liberty City, and they did a little bit of a breakdown of the OLED Switch that dropped not too long ago. But the main stories that we're going to cover today, there's a spread on games based on animes. We're also going to take a look at some of the previews that they covered. A lot of previews. There's a 6 previews that I found very interesting that are coming up this next year. And then, of course, 3 of the big reviews that they listed and why I wanted to cover those ones. So let's not hesitate. Let's jump right into this first segment, and this is where we are going to cover the games based on anime. Now, this story is more of really all it's about is about obviously TV shows or movies that were turned into anime, or that were based off games. So the ones that they cover are Persona 4, Castlevania, Street Fighter 2, the animated movie, Pokemon Origins, Ace Attorney, The World Ends With You, the animation, Pokemon Origins, I already said that one, Dragon Quest, The Adventure of Day, and Tales of Vesperia, The First Strike. Now, I'm not going to cover all of them. I'm going to cover the ones that I found interesting, as well as the ones that I watched, even though it's been like a really long time. So the first one that we're going to look at is Persona 4, the animation. Now, I'm going to tell you the truth. I didn't even know that they had an anime, but I was pretty sure that if they didn't, they were going to make one. I mean, when you look at Persona 5, you look at all the cutscenes and everything. So Persona 4, it sounds like Persona 4 was their bigger franchise series as opposed to Persona 5. So I'm just wondering if they're working on Persona 5. Maybe it's already released overseas. I don't know. Anybody that watches anime, leave a comment in the description below. If you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening to the podcast, then, drop a line on Twitter at RetroPods or at Real Retrolag, RealRetr0LAG. Okay, but Persona 3, so this is what the author says. This is from Kimberly Wallace. Persona 3 and 4 have all had anime adaptations and are a delight in their own right. Persona 4 serves as the best of the bunch. Persona's 4 cast was already a bit more lighthearted and fun to watch in game, but the anime gets one thing right, giving the previously silent main protagonist, I can't read, I apologize, Yu Narukami, more personality and development. From his shenanigans with Yosuke trying to pick up girls to bonding with the adorable Nanako, Yu is much more compelling in anime form, especially his deadpan snark. The anime follows the video game story with Yu moving to rural Inaba and learning of the Midnight Channel and its connection to recent deaths. It is based on Golden, the enhanced Persona 4 port, which introduced new characters and new bonding scenes, so you can expect to see the fun snow trip and faces like Mary. So all of that, question marks. Who are these people? How does this evolve? Is there stuff that's different from the game? It does say that it's from the Golden version or the port of Persona 4. So is that the base game? Is because I don't know. I've never really played this. I played a little bit of Persona 5. I actually still have it. And I know Royal came out after it. So I'm wondering, are they going to do the same thing with Persona 5 and Royal? Are they already doing it? I mean, are there manga that are attached to this or that have their own line? So, this is just something, but nevertheless, this is one of those shows that I probably would watch because I was interested in Persona 5. I mean, that's why I bought it. I started to play it, and like all games, got to go back to it. But I just like these kind of longer stories that have a different spin, have a different take. So it's interesting to know, where this goes, how in depth is it connected to the game? How much does it really break down their storylines outside of the game? And again, if there's even, it does say there's more details on their website, but we're not going to go that far into it. But nevertheless, this one was one I thought that was interesting that I probably would watch if I was going to watch any of these. So this next one we're going to take a look at is Castlevania. Now, Castlevania, I actually did watch. I started to watch season 1 and 2. I think I got to season 3, but I haven't finished it yet. And I know that they've already came out with season 4. This is one that is definitely up my alley. I remember when I first got into anime, one of the first shows I watched, coffee break. One of the first movies I watched was Vampire Hunter D. And Vampire Hunter D was just an amazing, it was just an amazing anime. I loved everything about it. I loved the darkness of it. I loved the storyline. I loved the characters. So it was really, really good. So when I saw this, I was like, yeah, that whole vampire aesthetic, especially coming from such a beloved IP as Castlevania, this just really taps into all that, which makes it great. So the description goes on from Kimberly. This Netflix series is merely influenced by Japanese animation and Hayao Kojima's artwork, but it rightfully deserves a spot on this list as it's one of the better video game adaptations in the animation space. The first 2 seasons adapt Konami's 1989 hit Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, focusing on Trevor Belmont, Alucard, and Sypha Belnades. Excuse me if I get the names wrong, all you purists out there. As they contend with Dracula and his army of demons. But the series isn't afraid to draw on other games such as Castlevania Curse of the Darkness for Season 2 and using Castlevania Symphony of the Night for inspiration to flesh out Alucard's backstory. A standout voice cast and 4 mostly solid seasons make this one worth watching. I like that part. Mostly solid. The vampiric lore was already strong, but Netflix's Castlevania fully embraces it and has a refreshing self-awareness that makes it all work. And I agree. I love the story. I love the development of the characters. I love the action attached to it. I love just how the story progresses. And to me, I feel like it fills the gap in the fact, here's a fun fact, that I never really played the Castlevania games. I dived into them, but I never played them because, as a kid growing up, you didn't have very many games. And then in addition to that, when I did play them, it wasn't like I was able to play them all the time because, I was borrowing them from friends and things of that nature. Castlevania is a very good one. I would say if you have not watched it, check it out. Definitely season 1 and 2. Haven't finished season 3, so I can't speak fully on that. And I heard that season 4 is really, really good as well. So let's continue on, shall we? The next story, or the next one we're talking about, is Street Fighter 2, the animated movie. Now, I remember watching this such a long time ago, and it's a good one. It is definitely a good one. I would tell y'all, if you have not watched this, you need to watch it. You need to check it out because, like I said, it is a good story for real. An oldie but goodie we couldn't resist, including the movie based on the game that gave rise to the Street Fighter frenzy and popularity. It's also a darn good animated movie, showcasing the sides of good and evil as we know it in the series. The movie centers on series mainstay Ryu as he continues to dominate on the fighting scene and garner more rivalries. However, things get more complicated when a mysterious crime syndicate, Shadow Law, led by M. Bison, brings more dangers to the acclaimed fighter and other familiar franchise faces, such as Chun-Li, Guile, and Ken. The adrenaline-filled pumping fights and realistic action remain a highlight, as well as the fleshed-out backstories for many iconic characters. Fun fact, many elements and designs from the movie were integrated into future Street Fighter games, including a nod to the intense Ryu-Ken showdown in Street Fighter Alpha 3. So all I know was it was good. I mean, the reason why I liked it is because I loved the art style. It was very reminiscent of styles of movies like Ninja Scroll, Vampire Hunter D, Akira, not so much Akira, but Fist of the North Star. It had that kind of appeal, but cleaned up and a little bit more polished. Plus, it had the stuff you loved of the Street Fighter games. So for me, this one is always going to be timeless. I mean, that's the great thing about anime, that it's always going to be timeless if it's really, really good. Ghost in the Shell is another one that's a classic. I mean, these are great, great movies that I'm just surprised that I can't say that developers and creators aren't doing things that are in that same vein, because that would be a little naive to assume that. But all I know is those to me are standout titles that just are hands down. And again, if you're watching on YouTube and you know of some great anime movies specifically that are like in those same kind of realms, leave the name in the description or in the chat, in the comments. And if you're listening to the podcast, well, just keep them in your head for me, and then, we'll figure out a way so you can tell me. I mean, you probably could send them to my email, retr0lag77@gmail.com. Okay, so we got another one we're going to take a look at, and that one is Ace Attorney. Now, the Ace Attorney series I have heard of. When I think of it, I think of games like Danganronpa. If I'm saying that right, I apologize to anybody if I'm not. Dark Riddler, help me out. But yeah, I've never played this series. It did look interesting. I'm always, because here's the thing, like as a fan of anime and just that kind of art, you can't help but always be interested in games that have that same similarity. I mean, that's why I loved one of the games that I'm going to talk about after this that I would love to see. Hopefully it's in the works already. But yeah, I never got into this game. But it is one that I would be interested in watching for sure, just because of the art styles and it just looks interesting. The Ace Attorney, the Phoenix Wright trilogy set the stage for the Ace Attorney series, reaching a high bar with its charismatic cast, silly cases, and surprising twists. The Ace Attorney anime is just another way to experience or relive all the great moments from the first 3 games, as it is a very faithful recreation of the subject matter. Watch Phoenix Wright open his law office doors, bond with his spirit-channeling assistant Maya, and face the undeniably ruthless Miles Edgeworth. The anime showcases Phoenix's past and includes all the over-the-top witnesses, from talkative security officer Wendy Oldbag to fierce photographer Lotta Hart. Comes from Come for the humorous hijinks Phoenix gets wrapped up in, but stay for the emotional revelations and the realization that the characters are just making the best out of the worst situations. That sounds cool. This is that kind of description for a anime is the same reason why I love point and clicks, because sometimes I just love a story more than the actual actions taking place or the and that minimal requirement of action. So sometimes you don't want to watch sometimes you want to actually do it, and vice versa. And I think this fills that void for people that loved the game but they loved the cutscenes or anime more. This fills that gap, and I think that all of these adaptations do just that. Like when you love something so much that you want to see it in another medium, that really transcends what its original intent was, and that makes a great franchise. So I think for Persona 4, Castlevania, Street Fighter, Ace Attorney, to include the other games that I didn't mention that were turned into animes, I think they all do that, and they all have their audiences that love them. So for me, these are the ones that I really would go watch if I haven't watched already. But one that I want to take a real good look at is none other than Tales of Arise. Now, Tales of Arise, I just picked up about a month ago, just started diving into it, and I can already tell you that if they have not already, they need to most Ricky Tick get on this anime, because I am hyped for this story. I mean, just playing the little bit that I played, I maybe played about an hour of it, and I already got so many questions based off of just the story that they started to tell. And we're not even talking about the characters specifically. I'm talking about other things. So maybe the anime dives into that. Maybe they really start to give you some of the feelers, or maybe they are working on that story. But for me, this is one that for sure deserves to have an anime if it doesn't already. I mean, I don't even know if they have a manga. I mean, from what I've seen, most of this is an original story, so I don't know if a lot of the source material is available yet, if it's out in other mediums, because, you know, sometimes games you'll find that there was actually anime of them already or manga already. But this one, from what I've seen, it doesn't look like that's the case. So if anybody knows, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if you're on YouTube. And I'm not trying to plug that, just saying. Yeah, this looks dope. I mean, it looks just, I want to get through this game just for the cutscenes, just for the anime, because it's dope. I love everything about it. I love that polished look. I love the colors. I love the character development. I love the environments. The music is great. Great anime. Great anime. This definitely deserves to have its own series, and that is no lie. So there you have it. Great anime based on video games. Great job from Kimberly Wallace. This is in the new issue of Informer. And yeah, I mean, what do y'all think? You know, do you think that there's some that didn't get mentioned? Do you think that there's some that are already being worked on that you know of that they could have covered? What do you think of this list? I mean, I can't really speak on Dragon Quest, The World Ends With You, Pokemon Origins. I mean, come on, it's Pokemon. Who's not going to like that, right? But I think that's for a very specific audience. Like, do you ever, like, you know that there's people that love the games, but do they have the same love for the trading card game and the anime? Or is it they love the cards more than they love the games? Or are they just all interconnected? They love everything about it and it can do no wrong. You know, that's the real question. That's the real, that's what I'm really interested to know. Who knows? Only time will tell if the Pokemon people love everything and tell me. In any case, we're moving right along. We are going to dive into some of the previews that they covered. Now, some of the previews I'm going to be taking a look at. I'm not going to take a super duper deep dive into these, but I am going to talk about them because these are games that I am interested in. I think other people may be interested in. So I'm going to give you the list and then we'll go down through each one of them. Bayonetta 3, Gotham Knights, The Gunk, which is already out, Ghost Recon Frontline, Weird West, Salt and Sacrifice, and that's it. So let's jump right into the first one, and that is Bayonetta 3. So Bayonetta 3 is going to be apparently only available on the Switch. So if you have a Switch, make sure you pick this game up. And if you don't have a Switch, you need to get one. All it says is that the release is supposed to be in 2022. But I mean, this is one of those franchises, one of those IPs that people really, really loved. Some of the information that they cover in the preview, they go on to say, revealed in a trailer during a recent Nintendo Direct, we first see a giant angel attacking Shibuya Crossing, the famous crosswalk in Tokyo, Japan. The military in vain tries to take down the beast until a barrage of bullets hits it from off screen. Puzzled, the beast turns around to see a statue of Lappy, the dog mascot from Platinum's 2019 release, Astral Chain. This dog turns out to be a red herring, though. When the monster tries to attack the Lappy statue, time slows and a familiar witch falls from the sky. From here, we see about 2 minutes of gameplay across a couple of different levels. So they basically are talking about the gameplay that is actually in the video. So you can kind of see the monster, the army trying to take it down, and, you know, the main protagonist of the movie or of the game makes their appearance, and you go from there. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this game, between this one and Bayonetta 2, that's 7 years. From what I'm understanding, it's been 7 years since Bayonetta 2 released. So they've had a lot of time to really develop the story, let a lot of people get into the game, play the first one and the second one. I know on the Wii U, they had the Bayonetta 2 release, which also gave you the original Bayonetta game. So I think they, allowed fans to really jump into the series and work on the story. Now the story seems like it's really hashed out and they're ready to release in this next year. Wouldn't be surprised if we see it first, second quarter, maybe around summertime. Who knows? There's really no specific date, but I will say it does look amazing. It looks cool. I've been a fan of it. And again, sadly to admit, I've never played any of them. So now it gives me an opportunity to get off my butt, try to catch up on the series and play Bayonetta 3. What about you? Are you going to play it? Have you played it? What are your thoughts? What are your expectations? What are you hoping to see? And here's the question. Is this a continuation of a story? Is this a new story? I mean, what do y'all think, people that have played this series? I would love to know. All right. So as we move right along, we are going to jump into the next trailer or the next preview or the next review, and that is going to be Gotham Knights. So I remember seeing Gotham Knights when I think they did the first trailer at E3. Was it this? I think it was this last year. Maybe it was 2020. But yeah, it looked really, really good. And apparently Batman is dead and the rest of the squad basically got to pull up the slack. It doesn't really say where the story leads off from, if it's a new telling, if it's a continuation of whatever happened in the last games or just what happened in general. Like, I don't know where this is picking up at. I don't follow a lot of the DC universe, so I'm pretty clueless going into it. But I do have a feeling that it's the type of gameplay that I like, which is that third person open world. It's kind of like the whole Batman, Arkham Asylum, Arkham Knight, Arkham City kind of feel, where it's open world, but it has a linear approach as well. Well, at least the first one did. It's going to be available on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. They do not have a release date for it yet, but from what they say in the preview, DC has long played with what Gotham would look like without the shadowy protection of Batman. Most recently, a peek into the future of the DC Universe revealed Tim Fox a potential replacement for the Caped Crusader, or at least a temporary stand-in. Nightwing, Robin, Batgirl, Red Hood are on a mission to not only keep the villains of Gotham like Mr. Freeze in check, they also have to fill the massive void left by Batman and Commissioner Jim Gordon after their untimely demise and find out what ultimately happened to Bruce. The Knights will have far more to deal with than random street thugs and doomsday weather machines poised to snap the city into an ice age. So it sounds like the main antagonist is going to be Dr. Freeze. Is that the truth? We don't know. They also say, while we've known about the presence of the Court of Owls in Gotham Knights since it's revealed a secretive syndicate recently took center stage in a story trailer and behind-the-scenes interviews shown off at DC Fandom. Scott Snyder introduced the court in his legendary run with the writer of Batman in 2011, pitting the world's greatest detective against the best-kept secret in the history of Gotham. So, the Court of Owls. I don't know who that is. It goes on to say, well, it doesn't really talk. Well, okay, hold on. Right here. It says, instead, its history is meticulously sculpted by the Court of Owls, a group often foolishly dismissed as mere folklore by the residents of Gotham. So for people that are real fans of the DC universe and follow it, who are they? What do they do? How do they play a bigger role in this universe? And how is that so detrimental in that it causes Jim Gordon and, Bruce Wayne's demise? Is this game going to tell it? I mean, a lot of the cinematics look pretty sick. And then here's the other thing too. You got 4 protagonists. So which one, is this one of those games where like you start as one character and then in certain parts of the game, you play as another character? Or is it going to be like Guardians of the Galaxy where you're one of the main heroes, the main person, and then you can use the others to assist in battles? Or do you get to pick and choose and they have essentially their own storylines? I think the third one would be really cool. But as some comic enthusiasts say, and I would tend to agree, is are they going to stick to the source material? I think if they try to rewrite history from the comic books, I think this is going to be a wash. Because what tends to happen with a lot of games, movies, comics, you tend to see these social narratives, these agendas kind of put into it to, in my opinion, to favor the stakeholders as opposed to appeal to the fans. And so that's one thing, just in terms of games, that I don't like to see, and I hope they don't do that with this. But you never can tell. You never know the direction that they're going to go. So it's just going to be interesting to see. In any case, I'm actually looking forward to this a little bit more than Suicide Squad. I can't say I've seen enough of Suicide Squad to really be excited for it. But this one is one that I'm really, really interested in. I haven't played, but I got to admit, I haven't played a lot of the Marvel universe. I played, what was the first Batman? Arkham Asylum. Is that the first one, I believe? I played that one, loved it. So I love everything about just the Batman series. I have the whole trilogy. So this, I feel, is like a continuation of that, but maybe it is a little bit different. But only time will tell, once we see some more, once we see some gameplay, and, stay tuned to the channel. Maybe we'll talk about it. Moving right along. Real quick, I just want to say I hope y'all enjoy the podcast. I hope you enjoy the episode. As always, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, whether you're listening on Google, Apple, Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube now, make sure you drop a like. Make sure you drop a sub. Reshare it to your friends. I love doing this kind of stuff. And if you are interested in any more of my other content, check out Real Retrolag, REALRETR0LAG on Twitter. And I have my links to my other Twitter channels, to my other YouTube channels. We cover podcasts. I have different podcasts that I do. I have an MMA channel where I talk about, obviously, MMA. I have a music channel where I like to do DJ sets and make music. And then, of course, I have Retro's Neighborhood, which is just a compilation of all of my content to include some exclusive stuff that you won't see anywhere else. Okay? So in any case, let's move right along. So the next one we're going to take a look at is actually a game that I have not heard a lot about. Now, I admit I was going to cover the gunk, but because the gunk has already came out, I'm going to wait and save that. So the next one we are going to cover is something that I've kind of heard of an announcement, but I didn't follow up on, and I really should. And that is Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Frontline. Now, this is supposed to be Ubisoft's run at a massive free-to-play online shooter that is in the tactical action series based around the Ghost Recon storylines. So, the Wildlands, Breakpoint. And I gotta say, I don't play a lot of online shooters. Really, I don't. But I did deep dive into Wildlands. I have Breakpoint on the shelf. Still need to play. So for me, this is one that I am very interested in. In the preview from Informer, they go on to say the upcoming release promises unbound freedom and class-based squad combat across an enormous battleground. It also pushes the camera in from an intimate third-person perspective to a first-person view. Now let's put a pin in that right there. The Battle Royale-inspired game sounds bombastic as ever, but if you ask me, the Ghost Recon series is in the middle of an identity crisis. I have to agree. I want to get into... So let's talk about the first thing, the third-person perspective to a first-person perspective. I think they're doing that really to appeal to a larger audience, and I also think from a design point of view, I think it's easier to design and develop a game in the first person. Because when you're doing third person, you have to design all of the actions. You have to design all of the movements. You got to design all of the reactions. You have to design different character models. So if you have a third or a first person view, you're simply hands, weapon, and that's about it. And maybe you do some renderings if they give or designs for if there's an ability to jump into vehicles. So that's the first thing. I don't think that's bad. However, as a purist of the games, more specifically of Wildlands, I really love that third person view, but I think they can always save that for another story, so I'm not upset. Wildlands 2, Ubisoft, Ghost Recon, Tom Clancy, if y'all listening, Wildlands 2, let's go. The other thing they say is in the middle of an identity crisis. And I kind of agree because you had Wildlands and then you did Breakpoint. And they were really two completely different stories. Sure, it's the same type of unit, but now, you're by yourself, but then you have your teammates, when they added the update. But in the first one, that was such a rich story. And sure, those elements of the cartel died. But if this man had an expanded network, who's to say he didn't have connections outside of that? Sure, he ran his region, but is he part of a bigger conglomerate of people? And then, at the end, the agents, what happened to them? How does their story evolve? To me, there's so much more to that story that they need to tap into. And if they don't, I just feel like it's such a waste. It's such a disappointment. They do talk about in the article, Ghost Recon Wildlands, released in 2017, was an attempt to differentiate the property from Ubisoft's other military shooters. The game offered 4-player co-op in a vast open world, and while it launched with mediocre reviews, it slowly grew a loyal audience after years of free content updates. But after a shaky follow-up in Breakpoint, it's clear the series has been backed into a corner by other burgeoning titles in the Ubisoft's catalog. The Division, it offers engaging co-op campaigns, intense multiplayer firefights, and the third-person gadget-focused combat that Ghost Recon was once identified by. Rainbow Six delivers an unrivaled competitive FPS experience, and Far Cry is known for its established open-world formula. So maybe it makes sense that Ghost Recon is shaking up its format yet again. So I think that's why that storyline, it was the key. To me, the Wildlands storyline was the key because you introduced tactical elements in an open world environment, third person, 4-player co-op, all of those things combined made the game what it is. So if you literally expand on that, as opposed to trying to introduce a new storyline with all these gizmos and gadgets, a different location. At first, you're by yourself, so you got to do it all. Then they saw the backlash. Then they added in your AI teammates. Like, that's what caused all the ruckus. I honestly think that the fan base wanted to see Wildlands 2. So that's where I think Frontline really, to me, should go. And I think that they should put a spin on Wildlands 2 and maybe they call it the real Wildlands or something. You know what I'm saying? Where it's the same environment, maybe some expanded areas, maybe the map more, more focused on key areas of the map. Because I think from a design perspective, it's easier to do it in a story base. But when you're adding in all of these other elements like cars driving by, wildlife, NPCs, that becomes a very big distractor in terms of a massive shooter where you're trying to just be competitive in a battle royale perspective. So you strip away those elements, but you still have some of those popular geographic locations with all of the tactical elements from the game. That's where your money is. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Frontline. I think there's a lot to take advantage of, and there's a lot to me, there's a lot of potential. That's what I'm really trying to say. I'm looking forward to it. It doesn't have a release date, but it remains to be seen whether the project will successfully carve out a space for itself or fall prey to an ongoing identity crisis. So we'll see. I'm very, very interested in it again, and I look forward to whatever else comes out. So stay tuned to the podcast because we will talk about this again. As we move right along, we are going to be taking a look at 2 more previews, and then we'll jump into these reviews. So the second to the last one is Weird West. Now, this is from Devolver Digital. This thing was announced a while back. I want to say it had to have been 3 or 4 years now up to this point. It's single player action. It's going to be available on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. So I would venture to say that maybe they delayed because of the new consoles. They wanted to start working on the current gen editions of these, or maybe they're just really trying to flesh out gameplay mechanics and aesthetic. In any case, Weird West is the upcoming isometric twin-stick shooter from Wolf Eye Studios, a relatively new developer headed by former Prey and Dishonored co-creators. Do you go in guns blazing with your shotgun and spray and pray until everyone's dead? If so, hopefully you've looted some dead coyotes for meat or stocked up on bandages in town. Or do you take a stealthier route? Hopefully you've spotted the poison barrel on the cliff that you can kick onto the enemies below, which damage them and allows you to surprise them with some bullets. They say different guns have different ranges and damage outputs, and fortunately switching between them is easy even in the heat of intense battle. There's also the combat scenarios were the most intriguing. You could view them as small puzzles that doubled as opportunities to gun down local gang members, and in doing so, Weird West's more immersive sim nature shined. For me, I'm going to tell you what really interested me about this game was the fact that it is a Western game. And I'm a fan of those things really specifically because of games like Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. For me, those types of games are always good. They tell a story of a time that we're familiar with, but we didn't get a chance to experience, just like so many other times, right? Like, I think that's why people love fantasy games. You look at fantasy games, they remind you of medieval times, the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, things like that. So they're historical in one aspect, but when you add a fantasy aesthetic to it, it gives you a whole different perspective and view in terms of just creativity and imagination combined with that history. So it really interests me when I see these types of games. Weird West is one of those that I haven't seen a lot of. I've seen the trailer. So to be able to see a little bit of the gameplay, see a little bit getting closer, it just makes it that much more exciting to get closer to being able to dive into. Because again, I was a huge fan of Red Dead Redemption 2. I mean, I spent a whole month on that game and I just played the main story. You know, I didn't really do a lot. I think occasionally I went and explored, but I didn't do little to no side quests. It was just all main story, but I just loved it so much that I wanted to just take my time with it. There was really no rush. So I'm hoping this game is the same way. I know Desperado 3 had came out and I didn't get a chance to dive into it, but that was another one that had that same kind of a appeal. Wasn't exactly, I call it a Western, but it had that feel, kind of that aesthetic a little bit. Or maybe it was, I don't know. People that played it, let me know what you think. But in any case, Weird West does not have a release date, but it is coming this next year. So stay tuned. You know, if you are looking forward to it, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Love to hear your opinions. And last but not least is Salt and Sacrifice. So Salt and Sacrifice is essentially the part 2, if you will, of Salt and Sanctuary. Now, there was some information about it. I want to say at one of the conferences in E3, maybe it was Guerrilla Collective, maybe it was Gamescom. I know it was at one of the conventions or one of the conferences that previously came out. So the person that had a chance to preview it, they go on to say that after playing the first hour of Ska Studios' upcoming release, it's clear the developer's penchant for high quality and high challenge remains intact. After committing one of several unforgivable crimes, your character chooses to become an inquisitor who hunts down mages rather than face the ultimate punishment. The side-scrolling levels are winding and fun to explore. And even combat against the lowliest opponent can mean death if you don't play defensively and strike with deliberate timing. Watch for the full release on PlayStation platforms and PC sometime in 2022. So again, there's not a lot to really see. I did see a video of what looked like somebody actually was able to get in some gameplay for this, but I don't know, you know, if how valid that was. I didn't want to show that on the podcast. I rather wanted to focus on the trailer, and the trailer just looks really, really good. I mean, there's a lot of different elements in it. I'm not too familiar with the series, but it is one of those that I've had on my wish list for such a long time that it would only be right to give it a shot, especially because to me, it looks like it really does have that Metroidvania aesthetic to it. Almost has a resemblance of a Blasphemous per se, or Ender Lilies, you know, things like that. Bloodstained. So it is an interesting looking game. Waiting to see when it's supposed to come out. Love to see some more gameplay, maybe get a better idea of what the story is before I decide if I'm going to jump into it or not. But in any case, I am interested in it. And that is the previews for this issue. There are others that I did not cover, but you know, if you want to take a look at those, then by all means, jump right into picking up this at your local GameStop or subscribe online. And yeah, I mean, you know, Game Informer always having those good previews, good reviews. I've always noticed that sometimes there's games that they put in the issue and you don't see them for a very long time, if at all. And if you do, they were so obscure that you didn't notice them, or maybe you did because you were a fan of them. But in any case, it's always good to see those previews because it gives you an idea of what's coming next. Now we're going to shift gears to what's came out, and this is the reviews. Now there's only 3 of them, and I'm going to be short with these because I mean people have talked about these in nauseum. And the first one we are looking at is Far Cry 6. Far Cry 6 got a 9 in Game Informer this month. I have started to play it. I've gotten into it. I haven't played in a few weeks. I need to go back. I'm very bad at continuing and finishing games, but when I do, I really, really appreciate them. So for concept, they go on to say, lead a revolution and topple the ruthless dictator of a fictional Caribbean nation of Yada in the latest entry in the long-running open world franchise. Sound, stellar voice acting, great soundtrack accompanying your journey. Playability, this is key. True to the franchise's form, Far Cry 6 allows you to approach nearly every situation however you like, offering gear and weaponry catering to your playstyle. And then replay value, moderately high. I would agree with all of these statements because when I started to play it, the first thing I wanted to do was unlock the map so I can start exploring the map because I always want to see what is the environment that I'm operating in. And then as you start doing that, you start to see, well, what can I do? What can I not do? Where can I go? Where can I not go? Who can I interact with and who are interesting people? What are some interesting locations? Then you also get the different feels of the music. You also get to see some of the different side quests, different weapons that you get, different customizations, different trinkets, just everything there is to an open world game, right? But also with that was the story. I mean, the story is really good. When you got Giancarlo Esposito, as the main antagonist in this, I mean, how can you not play this? And as I was talking about earlier, Ghost Recon Wildlands was one of my favorite games, but it was also one of my favorite games because of the location that they used, that type of environment, that Latin American culture. So playing this in like that Caribbean kind of vibe, it's in Wildlands, you got that third-person perspective. In this game, you got that first-person perspective. So to me, it's almost like a continuation of that universe, but in a different point of view, interacting with different types of people, doing different things. And I love that. I love that continuation, that vibe. Ubisoft, if you're listening to this, you need to do Tom Clancy Wildlands 2. All right, I've said it multiple times. Far Cry 6 got a 9. It is a very good game. A lot of people, they say, oh, it's more of the same stuff. But no, this one is really a good one. I can't speak on 5. I can't speak on 4. I can't speak on New Dawn. I know 3 is a beloved title in the series. And this one is just really, really good. It's really fun. Great combat. Great story so far, great environments. I could keep going on and on and on. There's more to dive into with the game. So, Far Cry 6, did you play it? Are you going to play it? What are your thoughts on it? Do you like the franchise? Where do you think the DLCs are going to take it? What would you like to see changed if you're one of those, if you're one of the loyalists that just stays playing these games and knows them like in and out? What are your thoughts there? So let's move on to the next one, and that is Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy in this issue got an 8.5. Enthralling space madness. It's available essentially for all platforms, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Replay value is high. Entertainment, a rarity in gaming. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is at its best when its characters are rambling on. The sound, a wonderful soundtrack filled with the 1980s hits and great orchestration heightens dramatic moments. All of the voice work is top-notch, but Star-Lord takes a while to truly find his groove. Now, I did hear this repeatedly, that initially Star-Lord, you're trying to figure out who he is. Is he going to be a very one-note type of character? But as the story develops, you really see him come into his own. And the supporting cast really just help paint this narrative, make it feel very involved and in-depth, like you're really in that universe. And I will tell you the truth, with the 80s soundtrack, it really does complement this whole group of characters. I like it. I like it because of the environments, the action, how it combines together to complement what you can do in a fight was really cool. But I can't say that I've dived deep enough into the story to truly appreciate what the story has to offer. I got up to chapter 3. Again, like all games, I gotta finish it. But aside from that, it's beautiful to look at, great sound, great design. Um, Again, the dialogue is really cool. It's kind of what you come to expect from the Guardians of the Galaxy group. And the one thing I was a little wary of initially was, with it not being the characters from the cinematic universe, would it have that same impact? But it does, and beyond. It's available now. I mean, it came out back in October. So pick it up, check it out, give it a whirl, watch some gameplay if you don't want to pick it up. But I guarantee you'll be surprised. It did have good replay value, and yeah, it was all worth it. So I misspoke earlier. I said there was three. There's actually two. I just looked at one of them, one of the previews as one of the reviews. So there you have it. We kept it under an hour. I know this was a longer one. I do apologize, but that's what we do with the Bleep Bloop podcast. We got a lot of stuff to talk about when we talk about games, right? I hope you enjoyed the format. I hope you enjoyed the video if you were watching it. If you're listening on the audio, I apologize if there were parts where I made it seem like I focused more on the video as opposed to the audio. But nevertheless, I tried to give you as much information as I could. And hey, we can only go up, right? We can't go down. So if you do like the Bleep Bloop podcast, make sure you subscribe to it on podcast services. Share it with your friends. Go to YouTube, Retro Podcast, and it's RETR0 Podcasts with an S. And, like, subscribe to the channel. Click that notification bell so you know when a new video comes out. Isn't that what all the YouTubers say? Hey, I'm a YouTuber. So in any case, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will catch y'all on the next one, okay? And until then, peace.